Jill will introduce our guest.
I'll put the other Jill up now for a little bit. I'm very happy to introduce someone that's near and dear to my heart. This is my brother, Casey Hermasen. He is the National Sales Director for Inside Benefits Group, and they are out of Bloomington, Illinois. Sorry. I could list off a bunch of bio information and tell all sorts of stories because I have all the dish. But the thing that he's here to talk about, which I think is the greatest thing ever, is his accomplishment and him and his family's accomplishment. He is a wonderful dad to 6 kids, 2 of whom are adopted, and him and his wife have started a nonprofit group to raise adoption awareness, and also a fundraiser event to help raise money for adoption support. So I'm going to turn the time over to him and let him tell you all about it. Thanks.
Well, she said that she could dish out some dirt, but she knew I was following her up, so that probably wasn't a very smart move. I'm thankful to be here today. I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to all of you. She mentioned that I'm a sales director for a group called Inside Benefits Group out of Illinois. Prior to that, I put together and ran a door-to-door sales company nationwide for about 10 years. And I had the opportunity to work with thousands of salespeople. And any of you that are in sales know that you always have, there's always some interesting experiences that you'll have in sales. Now, when you mix sales with door-to-door sales, you have some really interesting experiences. And I want to tell you about one guy that worked for me in Chicago. And this was a kid that came out of Utah to go work for us over there. And he was deep in the hood, if you will. And he was in this neighborhood. He was far away from his car, far away from any sort of business. And all of a sudden he had one of those moments, and I know we've all had them, and I'll tell you who's had them in here by the smile on your face in a second. But it's one of those moments where your stomach starts to gurgle a little bit. And it tells you, you better find a bathroom real quick. You're in trouble. And he had one of those, and he started sweating bullets because he didn't know what he was going to do. He knew he was too far away from his car. He knew that he was too far away from anywhere else. And so finally he got his guts up to go up to a door, and he knocked on the door, and this sweet little old lady answered the door. And so he mustered up his courage and told her what was going on. And is there any way I can borrow your bathroom? She said, absolutely, come on in. And she pointed him down the hall, and he went into the bathroom. And he said he was sitting there for about 35 seconds when he heard a noise. And he thought, what in the world was that? And he heard a little bit more, and he looked to his right, and about 18 inches away from his face was a shower curtain. And all of a sudden that shower curtain popped open, and that little old lady's husband was sitting in there taking a bath. And so he's sitting here face to face with this guy, and both of them are in some pretty compromising situations here. And he said he was so scared to death he didn't even know, he can't even remember what he did. He just knows he jumped up and he ran out of that house. And I call those situations shower curtain moments. We all have them. There's situations where we are so uncomfortable, or that we're in a position where we'll do anything to get out of it. And so what I want to talk to you about today is one of those situations. Let me give you some numbers that represent that. 25,000. The number 25,000 represents the number of kids that age out of foster care in the United States every single year. Now, when those kids age out of foster care, they don't have anyone to go back to. They don't have family support. They don't have a structured support system that they can rely on. When I left home, I had the support of my parents still. I still do. I have the support of other family members that I can call upon, but these kids have nowhere else to go. So 25,000 of them age out every single year in the United States. Out of that number, 52% of them are unemployed. So around 13,000 kids remain unemployed. 37% of them end up homeless. And I don't have the percentage, but I know it's a large number that end up in prison or in paths of life that they shouldn't be in. And it really comes down to one thing, and it's because they don't have a system to help them out, or they don't have a family, really is what it comes down to help them out. Only 3% of those kids end up getting a bachelor's degree or higher and going on to doing something that's, some sort of a worthwhile career in their life. Now, in the world, when we're talking in the world, there's, what is the current one? Over 143 million orphans in the world. Every 2 seconds, there's a new orphan in the world. Okay, that's just an astounding number. And so, my wife and I have been involved in adoption and foster care sort of activities for quite some time. We've looked for adoptions in Ghana, Haiti, in the United States, in several different states. We've had a lot of failed adoptions, and we've had a couple successful ones. Our first one was our boy Elijah that we adopted from birth about 8.5 years ago. It was a great experience. Our latest one, when you saw this group of kids over here that I was nervously watching the whole time thinking, oh man, I hope they stay quiet, and so forth. We had a conflict with a scheduling problem, so they weren't able to stay, but I wanted to introduce you to our newest son. His name's Dre. He's 14 years old, and he just came to our house 2 months ago out of the foster care system in Arkansas. And here in this area, you might not know it, but there's over 200 kids in just this area right here that are in foster care right now. And so there's a great need, not only an emotional need for these kids to have a family, but there's a social need. Okay, when we have kids that are aging out of the foster care system or going through this process of never being adopted and that sort of thing, and they end up either unemployed or whatever else, there's obviously a need for that. So this is actually a dream of my wife's. She wanted to do some sort of a fundraiser to help that process out for quite a few years now. And last year we finally got that put together, and it's called the Soul to Soul. S-O-L-E, like the sole of your foot, the letter or the number 2, and then S-O-U-L, like your soul. And what the Soul to Soul is on Labor Day weekend each year we do a 5K, 10K, half marathon, plus family activities in Declo at the Declo High School. Last year we had train rides and face painting and dunk tanks, and the fire department was there to shoot the kids down with water and bounce houses and all kinds of things. So we make a family event out of it. And we're coming up on our second annual Soul to Soul. We had a lot of support from runners coming from this area, from Boise, from all over the Burley area, and as far away as Battle Mountain, Nevada, Spanish Fork, Utah. We had quite a few runners come in. But the goal of Soul to Soul is to raise funds to be able to turn around and grant to families that are in the adoption process. The adoption process can get very spendy. I don't know, has anybody here ever been involved with adoption? It can become a very spendy, you have? Okay, it becomes a very spendy thing. Our first adoption probably cost us out the door about $20,000. The last one wasn't obviously that much because it was through the foster care system. Some of the international adoptions we've worked on have been up around $30,000, $35,000. So it's a very costly thing. And the sad thing that I run into is there's a lot of families out there who are willing to adopt, but they just don't have the funds to be able to do it. They have the funds to be able to support a child, but not the $10,000, the $20,000, whatever it is to actually bring that child home. So you have a lot of kids out there just waiting for someone to want them. And there's people out there that do, but unfortunately they don't have the funds to do so. So the goal of Soul to Soul is to raise those funds to be able to give grants to those families who have completed home studies and are in the adoption process to be able to bring some of those kids home. Now, when we found Dre in Arkansas and we started working with that adoption, the laws in Arkansas are that if a child is over the age of 12, then they choose who they want to be their family. So they'll present families to them, and they'll either say yes or no, and they make that decision. Dre chose our family, and when we went out there and we spent a week with him, towards the end of the week, I asked him, I said, what's the most exciting thing about this whole process for you? And his words were very simple, and he says, I finally have a family. And to see a kid that's went through all kinds of abuse from his real family, from his foster families, unfortunately, and to see a kid that's the only thing he cares about and that's the only thing he wants is to have a family. For that one kid, there's hundreds of thousands of other ones out there that need that. Now, to be involved, you don't obviously have to adopt. That's not for everybody, and that's all right. It's a long road and it's a hard road. It's not for everyone. But you can be involved in a lot of other ways. And my hope is that maybe some of you will yourself want to be involved, or you may know somebody who would want to be involved with what our event is. we're excited to raise the funds this year and pass those on to families so that they can bring other kids home to this area. There's a lot of, I was surprised last year. I think we had just over 130 runners and about probably 20 to 30 volunteers. But I was surprised at how many of them came up to me and said, hey, I was adopted. And I had one guy came up to me, and he was our oldest runner, and he was 76 years old, and he ran the 5K. And after the race, I was talking to him, and he said, we adopted all of our kids. And I was just shocked at all these people coming up to me of how much adoption's actually, the reach of it, and how many people has been affected by it. So our hope is that you'd want to be involved. There's a few different ways that we can do that. Number one, we're in the phase where we're looking for sponsors. If your company would be interested in sponsoring our event, we would love to have you. If you have the time on Labor Day weekend and would like to volunteer, we have a lot of different opportunities to volunteer, whether it's at a water station or helping out with a kids event or just helping organize the traffic, whatever it is. Another way would be by spreading the word. We have a Facebook group. We have a website called soul2soulrun.com. Just by passing that along to your contacts, or if you send out a monthly mailer to your clients, if we could put a little flyer in there. Anything we can do to spread the word. But it's for a good cause. It's for when you see a kid's face that's gone through that process and now has a family, you will never ever doubt whether it was a good cause or not again. And we all do a lot. I know this organization, you do a whole lot, and everyone does in their life. But bear with me for a second or humor me. Everybody reach as high as you can. Okay, now reach a little bit higher. Everybody has just a little bit more. And that's something we've learned through this process. Sometimes, boy, it knocks you down, but there's always a little bit more you can do. So if you're interested or would like to learn more about our event or what we do, then I'd love the opportunity to talk to you after this. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thanks.
We have a little bit of time. Are there any questions?
Why is the price of adoption so high, so enormously high? And where does the money go? In other words, let's say you adopt something, let's say it costs you $20,000 to adopt a person. How is that
Divvied out?
Divvied up, yeah.
Well, that was kind of interesting because when we were working on an adoption in Ghana, we started with one organization. And it was going to cost about $20,000-$25,000, and that one ended up turning into a total scam. And they were adopting kids. I mean, the problem with this is there's a lot of criminal stuff out there as well, and they were adopting kids out that had families. They were convincing the families that kids would come over here for an education, and they'd come to families here and convince them that these kids were orphans. And so we started working with the national director of adoptions in the government. And we found a source there where it was only going to cost us about $4,000. So there was about a $15,000 to $16,000 difference where we pretty much pinpointed the pockets it was going into. Unfortunately, even with agencies that are totally legit, it just gets really expensive with their overhead, their staff, what they need to make as a company to survive, that sort of thing. So if you get into it, you can find some pretty creative avenues to get an adoption done legally and to cut out a lot of that middle section. But yeah, unfortunately, it's just there's a lot of what they call overhead, and I think it ends up going in. I think a lot of times it goes in the wrong places, especially when you're dealing with international. I think a lot of it goes into government. Haiti is a prime example of that. Yeah.
When kids age out of foster care, is it unusual for them to stay connected with the family they've been with? Because I've heard this before, that they age out and then they're on their own. And then, so part of that is, what is the average length of time a kid generally stays with one family in foster care? Do they generally move around so they don't make that?
Yeah, it really depends because it depends on the connection there. We have lots of friends that have had some kids for 2, 3, 4 years. And for an example, there's a family here in Twin, and they have 3 or 4 foster kids that still keep in touch with their families. So there are those situations. But unfortunately, there's a lot of kids that'll go through 4, 5, 6 homes, move every 2, 3, 4 months or what have you, and then there's really no connections there. And unfortunately, there's some people in the foster care system that are there more for the money than to help the kid. And so Yeah, there's a lot of movement still.
Are the kids generally moved because the foster parent requests that they move, or does the kid?
Either way, it could be either thing.
Just isn't working
Yeah, it might
out.
be something where there's a situation where they might be causing some sort of emotional damage or physical damage to another child in that home. And so they move them for that. But it might just be that there's problems. For instance, with our son, we brought home, one of his things that he's battled with is no one ever pushed him to have to go to school. And so there was truancy issues. And so they would move him because of truancy issues, even though he got along great with the family. But since they weren't forceful with saying, you have to go to school and complete this, then they would ship him somewhere else.
Everybody remember Soul to Soul? That's in Declo on Labor Day weekend, September 3rd this year. And help me thank our speaker today. Thank you very much.